My name is Matt, and I'm joined by, he's waiting for his PS5, Dan. How's it going?
Have I changed my first name now, have I?
Yeah, that is your new name until the PS5 comes. Although, luckily, you haven't got too much longer to wait.
It could be better, it could be worse.
Exactly. Have you had any updates on your pre-order? Is everything all okay?
Well, no updates are good updates in my opinion, so we'll see, But yeah, I've not got any reason to believe anything's gone wrong.
Nice. That's good. That's good. At the moment, you're kind of in limbo, I can imagine, almost like purgatory, waiting for, you've ended, the gen is ended for the most part, and it has in most places in the world, apart from the UK, where we're still waiting for the PS5 to come out. But next week you'll have the PS5 in hand, fingers crossed, and you'll be experiencing all those new next-gen goodies.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the end of a generation. It's always, it's always a weird sort of transition. The sort of you're getting the best of the last gen consoles, and you're just scraping the surface of the new gen consoles. I mean, I sort of think back to, the transition from the first Xbox to the 360. And I remember thinking for a while that Chaos Theory, which I think released fairly late in the Xbox cycle, or the Xbox generation, it looked better than most 360 games.
Yeah.
So, I think, as we move forward, obviously the next gen consoles will flex the muscles a bit more, but there's not going to be, massive differences. So
No, and I suppose this is a different generation to ones that we've experienced before, because typically you'd get a new console and you'd be able to play some of the games, but on the previous gen on the new console. But this time
yeah,
around, literally after the next gen consoles come, there's going to be no reason to essentially use the old Xbox or use the PS4, because all those games, bar Shadow Complex and a few other oddities, will be playable on PS5. So
yeah, well that's it. I mean, the sort of the backwards compatibility is a lot better now than it was, back on the Xbox and the 360. So yeah, I mean, certainly not gonna be left without games to play, no matter how
yeah.
long it takes to get the next gen up and running.
No, not at all. So you got any plans for the PS4? Are you going for Viking Burial, or are you going to go for Darth Vader in episode 6, putting him on a fire and bonfire it away?
Oh, any plans? What for my PS4 console?
Yeah,
Um, the initial idea is to hang on to it because I've got the Spider-Man PS4 Pro. The actual console doesn't look any different, but all like the packaging and stuff is sort of Spider-Man related.
yeah.
And I've kept that in quite good condition. So one idea is to hang on to it. Second to that would not be destroying the console. If I was going to get rid of it, I would donate it to a children's hospital.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's kind of it now. You either gotta, you're gonna feel bad now if you keep it. You're gonna have to choose that hospital wisely.
I don't have to do anything. I'm just saying, if I get rid of it, it would be for a good cause. It would go to
But you're not. So no.
no, we'll see,
To those sick children.
No, it was an idea I came across. Someone I saw. I don't know. It was like a random Twitter post or something, and it kind of, it sort of seemed like it was actually quite a popular option. Like a lot of people. In fact, I don't know who it was now, but I think it was somebody that actually said, "Look, if you don't know what to do with your last gen consoles, I can assure you that children's hospitals that are always looking for donations." And then some of the posts or some of the replies to that tweet were from people that that were saying, look, I can attest to the fact that when I was on a hospital, when I was on a children's ward as a child, just having that distraction was the difference between a good day and a bad day. And I just thought, like, what a good idea, what a sort of a good idea to put essentially redundant hardware to a good home. Little kids aren't going to care whether it's a PS5 or a PS4. Just having something nice to help them is I guess that's the point. So that would be my idea.
Yeah.
But before people rush out and sort of do this, like if anyone's listening, like check with the hospital first. Like certainly COVID has complicated this idea, and some hospitals don't accept tech donations, or they do, but they obviously have to be tested first. So if anybody's thinking about doing it, contact the hospital first and see what their policies are. Don't just turn up with a box full of Xboxes and PlayStations and redundant hardware. Just check first is all I'd
Yeah.
say.
No, that's nice. That's a real nice sentiment. I know we were joking earlier, but that is a good way to use the hardware if you're not strapped for cash for the next gen or anything like that. So
Yeah,
that's good. Go to a good home.
yeah.
Well, look, if you listen to the podcast, hopefully, if you've been listening before, you know what this podcast is. But if you're new to the show, this is the Grapplehook Podcast, where me and Dan get together each and every week and talk about gaming news, what we've been playing, and talk about new game releases. If you want to reach out to the show and be a part of the show, you can do by emailing us at grapplehookpodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us on Twitter at grapplehookpod.
Yeah, please do.
So, Dan, what have you been playing since we last spoke?
Well, on the last generation, I've been playing Uncharted Lost Legacy. I've cracked on with that, and pretty much I'm getting close to finishing it, I would have thought. And I've played a little bit of Hollow Knight, about sort of 45 minutes, just just a taste, get an idea about it.
Nice.
Um,
What do you
yeah,
think about those games? What do you think about Uncharted? I'm quite keen to hear about that one because, funnily enough, I borrowed that from you before you'd even played it. So,
yeah. Well, I played it a little bit, but hadn't really sort of delved into it. I mean, when I went back to it, I sort of initially carried on with my sort of save from before, and then thought I'm a little bit lost with what I'm doing here. So I sort of restarted the game and did like the first 45 minutes over, and then got back to the open world segment, which I'd already got, I'd say, most of the way through it, and then I just simply jumped back into my initial save and then carried on as normal.
yeah,
But yeah, I'd say it's obviously there's some recency bias here. It's been a little while since I played Uncharted 4, at least like 2 or 3 years since that came out, and then obviously Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 were obviously much further back than that. So I don't want to speak negatively of the other games because I love them all, but this one feels sort of the best in terms of the the dungeon delving exploration side of it feels um, more refined. It feels like this is kind of the best it's ever been. The other games have all done it really well, but just the environment design of the dungeons and the tombs that that you're exploring in these sort of Indian jungle mountain region. It is I'm just absolutely in awe of just the intricate modeling and attention to detail. It's absolutely amazing.
yeah. No, I agree. I think obviously the game which you inevitably compare it to is Uncharted 4 because it's using the same tech, it's using the
Yeah,
same game engine and running on the same platform basically. But obviously Uncharted 4 focused a lot on Nathan Drake's story as a character and
sure.
the
Yeah,
introduction of his brother and going through like the history
like
and the
an origin.
flashbacks.
Yeah,
Yeah, whereas I think Uncharted Lost Legacy, the open world bit aside, which I do think is a real, um, a part of the game where it does fall down, the dungeons, the exploration, the characters are really engaging and enjoyable.
yeah,
And it's quite, I don't know about you, but I thought it was, some of the scenes that were in that game were just jaw-droppingly beautiful. Like I could
yeah,
not believe like it was running on a PS4 basically when I saw some of those scenes, and it wraps up the story nice. And of course, it's after the events of Uncharted 4, so it's the only way at the moment that you know what
what
happens. Well,
happens? Yeah,
how what happens to the universe that Nathan Drake and Chloe and all the other characters inherit. So
yeah. I mean, you can tell it's definitely it's definitely a Naughty Dog production. Some of the I won't go into specifics because people listening might not have played it, but there's some animal segments within the game which to me felt very reminiscent of the giraffe sequence in The Last of Us. Just these really beautifully constructed, very very strong narratives. This sort of very strong character building scenes. It does it really well, and the signature of a good game for me is a game that makes me care about its characters, both the characters you play as and the characters that you play with. And Uncharted's always done a good job of that, but it's certainly no different with Lost Legacy. It's really really good. So I'm enjoying it. I'll
Nice.
get it finished. It'll
Nice.
sort of fill some of the time between now and the next gen. And for Hollow Knight, I can't say too much. I'm sort of still working out my or rather getting my bearings for it, but it's a very very beautiful game, visually and the sound, more specifically the music, is sort of very well done. I'm sort of at a point where I've dived down into like the depths below, and I've there's been a kind of a bit of a explanation given to me about what happens to people that go into the sort of the underneath or whatever it's called. People sort of, I don't know, kind of go crazy like with the isolation of it all, and I've kind of met some of the NPCs down there. I've met one that is like he's like going around and like doing like maps and stuff, and his partner works on the surface, and you can go up to her and get maps and a compass and stuff like that, which I've not done. But yeah, I'm sort of just exploring it, just getting an idea for it, and sort of trying to obviously, like you said, it doesn't give you a lot of narrative. It doesn't really tell you very much about what it's about. You've kind of just got to jump in and just play it and just kind of work that out as you go, and I guess that's sort of where I'm at with it. But I like it. It's great, and obviously it was a PS Plus game, which is even better.
Of course,
it's
yeah.
free, so.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah, definitely. One of the most atmospheric games I've played, and I think it is down to the visuals, the fact that the story is pretty much told in its environmental storytelling at its finest, and it looks great. So I'm glad. I'm keen to see how much you get done before PS5 comes, because obviously the big hitters are going to be occupying a lot of your time. In fact, I don't think I've asked you this. What games are you getting with your PS5 when it arrives?
On release, I've pre-ordered digitally Miles Morales. My plan was to play Miles Morales and Cyberpunk on release.
Okay, yep.
Cyberpunk's on its 356th delay, so I've now currently only got Miles Morales to play on launch. I do have PS Plus, so there's 24 games which are being added to the sort of the library, which I'll be able to play. Things like God of War and what was the main? I think there's God of War was the main one. Days Gone as well is in there. So there's a few. There's a few sort of big hitters in there, which I could always go back that all sort of benefit from the PS5 boost. But I don't know. I'm considering a sort of a second game on launch. I'm very much considering one of the two Ubisoft games being Watch Dogs or Valhalla. Haven't really committed to the idea of that yet. The other option being Call of Duty, which I'm again a bit on the fence with. But Cyberpunk's only December 10th, so that's that's kind of it's like less than a month away. And I've kind of previously on the podcast committed to the idea that I want to platinum every PlayStation 5 game I buy. So I've got to be, selective with what I commit myself to. And I don't want to have too many games on the go. I want to, keep it really at 2 is the most. I want to, 3 if there was like, some really good stuff going on. But really, I think I want to keep it down to 2 games. And I don't know if there's anything I can really get through before Cyberpunk. So.
Yeah, there's not much time before that comes out. So
I think,
I'm sure Spider-Man will keep you busy, particularly if you're going to platinum it 100% it.
yeah. Well, I think what I definitely am going to do, which I hadn't really considered before, is I'm going to pay the extra $20 or whatever it is in pounds to get the Spider-Man remastered for the PS5. I've now seen a little bit more of that, and the differences between the PS4 version and the PS5 version. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, it almost looks like a new game to me. And there's ray tracing factored into it. Obviously, there's the controversial decision to change Peter Parker's skin or character model, more specifically, and the just the overall game. I mean, it almost looks like it's a new game, and it's been a little while since I played through the original story, so I'm probably going to do that. So it'd probably be a lot of Spider-Man for the first month, I think.
That sounds class. I can't think of a better way to spend the time. And obviously, you've got the Astrobot Playroom as well, which the reviews for that have come out. Yeah, it's built into the console, but the reviews are absolutely fantastic for it. And I think the Astrobot has gone from strength to strength. The VR they came with it, there was like including a demo in PlayStation VR Worlds, which was quite good, and then they released a standalone Astrobot something mission. I can't remember what it's called, and it's apparently the best VR game. So it's nice that they kind of kept this train running, and there's some real love and attention to the PS5 by just dropping it in there, almost like Wii Sports when that came out with the Wii.
It does have that feeling, yeah. I've heard some really good things. I mean, some people saying it's, like the best platform game they've ever played, which might be a bit extreme, but yeah, I've certainly heard some very very good things about that. So yeah, like you say, and it might even be an easy platinum trophy. We'll see. So yeah, I've got some things to play. I'm eagerly awaiting it. I like I say, I might pick one or two of the other sort of third-party launch titles. Demon's Souls is definitely something I want to play, but again, I certainly don't think I'd platinum Demon's Souls before Cyberpunk. So
I think with the sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say Demon's Souls, that game, I wouldn't even want to play it. I just want to sit and look at it because it is hands down. I think I mentioned it before. It's the best looking game of next gen, in my opinion. It looks unbelievable.
Yeah, I wasn't particularly interested at first, and then I saw I guess it was kind of like a bit of a developer diary series that they've got going for the game, and they showed some behind the scenes footage on the recording of the soundtrack for the game, and I mean the soundtrack is just absolutely mesmerizing, and it just got me thinking, like if the soundtrack for the game is this good, then I can only imagine, the quality of the game itself. And it seems like there's a lot of passion and a lot of careful deliberation has gone into it. It certainly it gives me the feeling of it. It's a sincere, sort of revisiting of the franchise. It's not a sort of a cash grab. They've really, done what they can to make this, a noble, not noble, but it's worthy of the original, but it's also a genuine next generation game as well, and I think that's a good thing. So
yeah,
if not at launch, at some point I'll pick it up and get through it.
Very good.
And dare I ask, what have you been playing?
Well, obviously I've got the Series X, so I've jumped onto next gen a little earlier than you, and the console itself is quite interesting. I got the box dropped off early in the morning after a frightful 24 hours, thanks to Yodel and their horrendous delivery tracking services saying that it'd be delivered late, and then it was on time and absolutely nothing to worry about. But then the actual console itself, it was quite nice opening it up because the box was a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be. And the console itself isn't that big. It's thicker than the Xbox One X, but I was expecting, given the pictures, obviously you got nothing to really relate it to, but you see pictures and videos coming out of it. I thought it was going to be a lot bigger, and it's quite a small console. It probably, I'd say, similar size to the Xbox One X, but it's heavy. It is really heavy. I wasn't expecting, given the size of it, I was expecting it to be a lot lighter than it was.
Yeah.
But pretty much spent all day yesterday just installing games for it. The games, I bought Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and that's one of the games that I've been playing over the past day or so. And it's an Xbox One game, basically. But when you put it into the Series X, it recognizes that it is the Series X version, and you get a prompt to download the upgrade. So it was like a 65 gig download.
Yeah.
Because everyone's hammering Xbox Live because of the new consoles, because the Series X came out in the US at the same time and worldwide release. It took quite a while to install the update. So actually, I spent a lot of time just looking at the bottom half of the console, because I've tucked it behind the TV because it's quite big, and just spent a lot of time yesterday just downloading games. But I finally got onto Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I've been playing that, I want to say, for around about maybe 4 hours so far.
Did you buy that because it was a next-gen game, or would you have bought that anyway?
I bought it because it was next gen.
Right.
I remember I'm not a massive fan of the Assassin's Creed games, so I used to be. I really enjoyed Assassin's Creed 2 and Assassin's Creed 4, but the other ones, I found them a bit dull. And I've got Odyssey, but I never played it. But I heard people really rave about that one. And I saw the reviews come out for this one. And of course, it's like a Viking Nordic setting, which already piques my interest, because I like the idea of the link to the Niflheim and Asgard, and the kind of beliefs that they have. And of course, it looked gorgeous. So I thought, right, I want to see what this new console can do and what it looks like. So I booted it up. And yeah, the game looks unbelievable. It looks really, really impressive. The visual fidelity that it and the level of detail, and how it's just solid smooth at 60 frames. It's just like butter. It really is impressive. I've not seen that level of visual fidelity on a console game, for ever. And it's quite good. I think it's standard Assassin's Creed. I'm still quite early in it, so obviously you start off the game in Norway and you end up going to England. That's kind of the premise, the early part of the premise of the game, from what I understand, because I haven't got to England.
I'll say this though, as we go forward, try not to spoil anything.
No, I'm not going to spoil anything, because like I said, I've not even got there yet. This is what I got from the video review, and when I watch the review, that's where the kind of the visual flair comes out, because there's this, obviously in England there's a lot, it's very colourful in autumn and things like that, whereas you start off in Norway and it's very icy and snowy, as you'd expect. So it's nice to look at, but I'm waiting for that big moment when you get to see other seasons apart from just cold winter. Very much like Skyrim, where you start with Skyrim, it's like, it's icy, then you go to Riften and you get loads of nice and colour again. It's quite good. But yeah, I'm quite enjoying it so far. I'm like I said, bit early in to really form much of an opinion of the story and the characters, but so far very impressed with how it looks. And then I dabbled around with some of the other games on the console, and also dabble with the features like quick resume to see how fast things boot up. And the console's fast, really fast. I didn't realize how slow my Xbox One X was until I used this console. The one thing I will say about the Series X, which is the only downside I found of it so far, is that it doesn't feel like a next-gen experience. Now, and I don't mean that in terms of how it looks, how it plays, but I remember queuing up for the PS4, getting my PS4 in the midnight launch. Me and you went to game to get it, and you get back in, you booted it up, and you were like, Jesus, wow, this looks fantastic. It was super fast. You go from the PS3 system onto the PS4 system, and it's just night and day. A beautiful new UI, new stuff to play with. And the Series X kind of just feels like when I got a One X. It's the same dashboard as an Xbox. It looks, but the games look prettier. It's almost like if you upgrade your PC and you can play fancier game titles on it.
Still on Windows.
So
yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the controller's virtually the same. It has a share button on it, and it has a bit more texture to the side of it and
Yeah,
things like that. So it's all very familiar, and the dashboard's exactly the same,
I think.
albeit the only
Go ahead.
Sorry,
No, it's okay. You finish off.
no. What are you gonna say? What are
I
you
was
gonna
gonna
say,
say.
mate?
So I think that I think continuity is really what Microsoft have aimed for with the Xbox, and I mean I'm saying that obviously without having played one, but everything that I've seen from from their kind of launch and what they've marketed this console around, being things like Game Pass and backwards compatibility. It's sort of it's really preaching consumer friendly, and I think
Yeah,
you could look at some of the decisions they've made and said like, oh, they're really boring decisions, or the sort of the more half full approaches they've made, sort of safe decisions which have continued the experience that has already been established, through things like the Xbox One X. Um, I think certainly as we move forwards, you're going to see, the machine, the thrills of the Series X come out, and it's, things that come out, that will really make the console sing. But I think right now it's just about sort of continuing the sort of the goodwill that they've already built up. And sort of things like
yeah,
the interface,
yeah. I definitely get that.
keeping that the same, keeping the controller more or less the same. They're not flashy, exciting decisions, but at the same time, I can see why they've made them.
Yeah, and I think it is that familiarity when you boot up the console, and it is like it just instantly screams at you. It's a more powerful Xbox, and
Yeah,
that's what it is. I know it sounds a bit silly to say, but it's the same experience, just more powerful.
I think
There are benefits and things
when you're referencing the
the,
PS4, I think what we're sort of really getting at here is it's just not exciting what they sort of what's being offered.
yeah.
It's just more, it's more of the same. It's just it's great, but it's just not exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the benefit that the PS5 is going to have compared to the Series X. And you could probably allude to this next week when you've got the console. But it definitely feels like just a more powerful Xbox, and that's for better or for worse.
Yeah,
I think for me, obviously, the reason I got the Xbox over the PlayStation was the fact that me and my partner play co-op games, and split screen games would run out
yeah,
of. So I've now got the One X upstairs, Series X is downstairs in the living room, the big TV. It
yeah,
just opens up more co-op games to play. But in terms of next-gen experience, the PS5 definitely seems like it has a lot more new things to it, like a new UI, a new exciting controller with which I think has caught a lot of people off guard in terms of how the functionality of it and how a new experience it feels.
the haptic
Whereas the
feedback.
Xbox,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Whereas the Xbox is the same thing but better. We're just going to throw more power at it. And for what
yeah,
it's worth, playing those games on it, like I've played Assassin's Creed, I've played uh, Forza, I've played Sea of Thieves, all these type of games where you do get visual benefits on, and
yeah.
they look great. They do look great, but it's the same thing. So hopefully, we'll start seeing it push a bit more going forward. But I'm enjoying the console. It is absolutely silent. I forget it's there. It's not like my launch PS4, which sounds like it is going to take off and shoot off into space anytime soon. Whenever I turn it on, so it is quite nice that. So obviously that's the game I've been playing the most, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And split screen wise, me and my partner have started playing For the King,
Yeah,
which is a game I've heard a lot about, but I've never really got around to doing it. And it's like a tabletop style game,
I played it
which
on
is a
PC,
roguelike
so
adventure.
I do have a bit of an idea about what it's about, but yeah, but probably I've played it like maybe 2 or 3 hours at most.
Yeah, it's good. It's a nice replacement to a board game. It's all randomly generated in terms of the scenario and the world that you're in, and I'm playing it on the couch with my partner. So I control one character, she controls another character, and it's turn based. So you kind of you both control your characters each turn.
Yeah,
It's quite enjoyable. I think at a time where we're no longer able to go around to people's houses and play board games and tabletop games, it's a nice
didn't do that anyway.
alternative. Well, used to do that quite a fair bit, but it's it's a nice alternative for if you can't do it, at the moment with COVID and all that. So it's done quite well, and I think it's available on nearly every platform, and it is relatively cheap as well. So I think if you like those, those tabletop board games with like an RPG element, I think it's really good, worth checking out. It's charming. It has a lot of dice rolls in there, so
Yeah.
a lot of the accuracy of your attacks, the things that you find on the map, is all based on the look of the draw, which is quite good. So yeah, highly recommend for the King if you're into that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, I played it co-op, albeit online, not sort of couch co-op. But I did play it. I mean, it was a free game for one of the Epic free releases that they do weekly. It was a free game a little while back, and
yeah,
I installed it and thought this would be sort of fun. I didn't really know much about it, but I thought that'd be fun to try sometime. I sort of knew it was sort of very much a cooperative experience, and I sort of dived into it. And I mean, I admit I've not played it enough to really, sort of critique the game or make a sort of an informed opinion about it. But the sort of the 2 or 3 hours that I played, I really didn't like it. I think some of that could be explained by I didn't really know what I was getting into, so I'm certainly not going to criticize the game for what it is, because obviously what it is it's deliberate. They've designed it for an audience, and people that like those games. I think you sort of said it was kind of like a a roguelike game. I'm sure with that audience, it's been very well received. But I think I just found it. I don't know. I just found it sort of, for want of a better word, I found it quite frustrating, and
yeah,
it didn't really feel like we were sort of getting anywhere, sort of like move 3 or 4 tiles and then you meet some absolute badass that just annihilates you and then you go back to the beginning. And I don't know, I've not played it enough, but what I played I didn't like. So it's kind of,
yeah. I think the thing this game doesn't do very well is it doesn't explain itself in terms of the systems
yeah,
in the background. Like, it talks about you get equipment and it talks about, right, it increases your vitality, reduces your intelligence, and you have no idea what any of that stuff does because the game doesn't tell you. And then you try and look into, what does an encounter mean, and it opens up almost like like what you'd get when you go play a board game at someone's house, which is a massive list of instructions and things like that. So it can be quite overwhelming at first when you are playing it. But I think, taking your time with it, kind of just leveling up your character at first by the random encounters, and it does a very good job in the first opening part of the game of a very quick introduction in terms of some of the mechanics, like go here and do a quest,
yeah,
and this is how the fight works and stuff like that. But I'd certainly think, I think roguelike, it calls itself a roguelike, but I think the only thing that's roguelike about it is the fact that it's randomized and when you die, that's permadeath.
yeah,
But
definitely,
it's
yeah.
just like you would do with a board game. So, but yeah, overall, I think it's an interesting one. I think maybe just it might be for you. If not, give it another try at least with a good group of people who know what's going on. So
Yeah, well, I think with it being in terms of competing for playtime, revisiting For the King on PC isn't very high up on the to play list, I'm afraid.
yeah, it might be one of those things when COVID kind of disappears and you can actually go to people's houses again. Maybe sitting around with a few mates, a few drinks and whatnot, and playing it in lieu of an actual board game. It'll be a good idea.
We'll see. We'll see.
Good bit of fun. So
Should we talk
should
about?
we move on to the news then?
Yeah, Jinx.
Jinx.
So I saw that the Deathloop has finally got a release date. That's been announced on May 21st. Of course, that's the game which is published by Bethesda, developed by Arcane. It's coming out May 21st on PS5 and PC. It's a 1-year timed exclusive, so it's not a perma exclusive. I think we were both quite interested by that, weren't we, when we watched the PS5 showcase and the games that they were revealing?
Yeah, it was. I like the idea of it now. I don't know whether it's just because of the setting or not that I really enjoy, because I loved Time Splitters and Time Splitters 2. You go back to the 60s and there's almost kind of a mission that you do very early on in the game where it's almost like set like Austin Powers style time, 60s English spy, jokey atmosphere and things like that. But it kind of made the reminiscent of that, and the idea that, well, it's Arcane, so I'm pretty much on board with anything Arcane does anyway. So definitely intrigued. Is this something that you were keen on picking up?
Yeah, I think it's going to really, it'll boil down to what games are out at that time and what else I'm playing. You know, again, sticking to this sort of this platinum every game commitment. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested. I thought out of the PS5. Out of the games that they showed at the PS5 showcase, it was certainly one that stood out to me. And you know, being a next gen first person shooter, it looked like it had some originality to it as well. It showed things which I've not seen before. I mean, I think with first person shooters, it's quite hard to reinvent the wheel. You know, it's such such an established genre, and there's so many first person shooters that I think it's, generally speaking, it's quite hard to hook my interest with an FPS game. But certainly from the the trailer that they showed at the showcase, it certainly got my interest. So yeah, I'm definitely considering it, and yeah, we'll see close to the time. But yeah, it's one to keep an eye out for.
Nice. And I think what's quite interesting is the fact that they've come out straight out of the bat and said that it is now a 1-year timed exclusive. I can't remember them saying that before. They said it was exclusive to PS5. So do you think that's, obviously Xbox have just announced their intention to buy Bethesda. They haven't actually gone through with it yet. But do you think this has got some influence with that?
Influence in what way? How would you?
And the fact that they've actually announced it. So obviously they've announced now that it is a 1-year exclusive release on the console.
Yeah.
And if we look at historic releases where they are exclusive, they don't really mention it's exclusive. They kind of just release it and then have an announcement 8 months down the line saying, oh, now it's coming to the Epic Store, or now it's coming to Xbox, or vice versa. Yeah. So do you think that the fact that Xbox is now is intending to buy Bethesda has prompted this announcement that it is now going to be a timed exclusive?
I mean, that I think. Well, ultimately, I think maybe. Well, neither one of us really knows for sure, but I mean, I would speculate that you could look at how timed exclusivity has been handled in the past, and maybe they've learned from those mistakes. They're looking at this and thinking, well, people don't like this kind of ambiguous, sort of being strung along and not really knowing, whether or not it's an exclusive permanently, or if it starts off as a permanent exclusive and then several months down the line it turns out it isn't and it comes out on other platforms. I think maybe they've looked at this and thought, well, there's existing business arrangements between Bethesda and Sony which we can't interfere with, but in the interest of being transparent to the consumer, let's make it clear that whilst this is an exclusive, on the PlayStation 5, it's only for a certain amount of time. So, I mean, again, the more sort of positive side of me would sort of look at this and say that they've made this announcement, in the interest of consumers and just making it clear, look, if you want to play it on day one, then you've got to get a PS5. If you're quite happy to wait and play it a year later, then it'll come onto other platforms then, or it'll come onto the Xbox Series X and S at that point.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, I mean, kind of, obviously we've just been talking about the PS5 exclusivity and whatnot. I think, I don't know whether you saw this earlier this week, but PlayStation kind of released their final trailer before the PS5 release, showcasing some of the exclusive games coming to the console. And it gave us a rough idea of when we know some of the Sony exclusive games are going to be coming out, because they've been quite ambiguous. I know they were talking about the idea that, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart was going to be like a PS4 game, and then that rumors going on about that, and that clearly isn't the case. Now it is PS5. So we now know that obviously Miles Morales and it is coming out, and Demon Souls, and they're like the big exclusive games for this year. Then early next year, we're going to get Gran Turismo 7, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and Returnal by my boys at Housemarque, which is exciting. And then second half, we're expecting Horizon Forbidden West and probably the God of War sequel at some point as well. So what's interesting, I think, about this is there's a lot of first-party games coming out in this period of time, but they seem like they're all being quite spaced out. And I don't think the games that are coming out in the same time frame are going to be competing with each other. For example, Gran Turismo 7, I think it's good to get it out early because Gran Turismo 6 came out on PS3 after the PS4 launch, which was a bit of a bizarre decision.
Yeah, I remember
so,
that.
Having that coming out at the same time as Ratchet and Clank, they're not going to take away, very small people, I can imagine, are going to be interested in both games. So sounds like obviously, you're going to get the PS5 in next week. You've got quite a good year of content ahead of you, really, which is quite nice to see, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't want to buy a console and then have nothing to play. So yeah, and yeah, I mean, I won't sort of necessarily go out and say every one of those games will be games I buy on launch, but with the exception of Gran Turismo 7, I'd say I've certainly got an interest in all of them. Ratchet and Clank has been a franchise I've dabbled with in the past, but I wouldn't say, I'm an expert. I mean, I remember playing like the very, very first one and then maybe one or two of them after that. Horizon Forbidden West, I'll certainly be interested in that. And Ragnarok, it goes without saying. I'm certainly going to pick that up. I think with the PS5 having God of War as a backwards compatible title, one of the reasons I've not sort of pushed myself to finish that before PS5 comes out is I'd love to jump into that with the with the PS5, and obviously the benefit of higher frame rates and better resolution, and just the controller, and all of the peripherals that come with it, the 3D headsets. So I'll certainly I'll make a conscious effort to get God of War done and dusted before Ragnarok comes out. But yeah, I mean they're all exciting games, and even Gran Turismo 7, which isn't necessarily something I'm interested in, that's obviously a massive game. For racing sim fans, that's that's obviously a no-brainer if you've got a PlayStation. It's essentially the PlayStation Forza, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, and it kind of shows that Gran Turismo 6 came out on the PS3 after the PS4 had launched, and it still sold 7 million copies, which is massive. That's as much as the first Last of Us game. So it is really important to Sony, and those games typically, back when these like the PS3, PS2, PS1, the games that always typically looked the best were the racing games. They always, had made the really clever use of the technology, just looked really impressive. So for PS5, it's going to be, particularly in the first year, it's going to be a really impressive showcase of the technology in the console and how good it looks. And I think we saw a few weeks back some of the rendered screenshots from the game captured in game, and they just looked unbelievable. Like ray tracing, it's just I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of the best looking games on the console when it comes out. So we shall see. Well, thankfully we don't have too long to wait for that, and I always felt like Gran Turismo, those type of games are the ones where you want to show when your mates come round, your friend comes round, like, oh yeah, here's my here's PlayStation 5, here's how good it is, and here's how good it looks. Because those games always look good. I can't think of a racing game that looks pants. Between that and Ridge Racer, they're like the two really impressive visual games that are released on pretty much all Sony hardware when they first came out.
Well, this is the first PlayStation that hasn't launched without a Ridge Racer, isn't it?
Yeah. In terms of racing, because I think the PSP launched with Ridge Racer, and that was like the best looking game on the system. And Vita launched with Ridge Racer. PS3 launched with Ridge Racer. I don't think we got a Ridge Racer on PS4, did we? I don't think we got one at launch for that.
I'm not sure. I remember sort of reading something recently saying that the PS5 was the first Sony platform to launch without a Ridge. I mean, you're the Ridge Racer guy, so I'd listen to your information on that one. But I mean, aside from anything else, it's been a long running game for the PlayStation brand. But wasn't it made by the
Yeah.
Liverpool? It was made by a Liverpool studio, wasn't it? Sony Liverpool.
No, you're thinking of Wipeout,
There
which
we go. Wipeout.
yeah,
Yeah.
Wipeout was the one that came out. It's
Wipeout's the kind of like sort of cyberpunk vehicle, like loop to loop sort of hover vehicles, isn't it? Ridge Racer is the more like car based arcadey one, right?
Yeah, that's the one that's all focusing about drift.
Yeah, I got
yeah. Whenever I hear Ridge Racer, it just reminds me of Kaz Hirai pulling out on stage talking about what E3 conference, talking about the console, one of the consoles, and he pulled out the PSP Go from his pocket and started playing it and talking about, look at me now, I'm playing Ridge Racer. Ridge Racer! But of course, it's one of those conferences where everyone's kind of being like really professional, so it just sounded really awkward and kind of really forced at the time. But yeah, what a weird device the PSP Go was. That was just
looked good.
I've never seen anyone with one. Like, I've seen people with PSPs. I've seen a handful of people using Vitas in the wild, but I've never seen a PSP Go in the wild apart from when someone's selling one, which is weird. I never understood why.
Because it had like the sort of the BlackBerry sort of sliding screen, didn't it?
Yeah, it was very similar to the there used to be that Sony Ericsson phone or Sony phone that came out, which had the slide-up screen and you could play PS1 games on it, and that was very similar with the slide-up screen Bluetooth, and it looked like a really nice device, but all I've seen of them when I go to like game conventions is basically people have just jailbreaked it and are playing Pokemon Go on it, Pokemon Green on it and stuff like that, which is clearly not what it was intended for, but yeah, I've never seen one properly in the wild. And it's a bit weird to say that I've seen more PS Vitas in the wild, because PS Vitas are, well, only 3 of them exist in the wild. So only 3 people were stupid enough to get one. And I bought all 3 of them, so so yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got me to get a Vita. I got a Vita and platinumed Tearaway on there, and Uncharted Lost, was it Lost, what was it called? Golden Abyss.
Uncharted Golden Abyss, which is great actually. Funnily enough, I didn't realise the timeline of that game. I didn't realise it was set before Drake's Deception, which is Drake's Fortune, sorry, which is the first game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is going to be around the same time that Tom Holland, the Tom Holland film, and Mark Wahlberg as Sully is set between the events of Uncharted 3 in the flashbacks and Drake's Fortune. So, and this game is before then as well. So, but yeah, it's a shame. It makes me sad when I think about the Vita, because I just think about how much potential it had and how Sony just really, really did a number on it and just let it die. But Vita means life, and it carries on living, and it's still selling games to this day, even though mine is sat gathering a bit of dust now. You know.
There you go.
Yeah,
so,
sometimes.
In other news, maybe with some controversy, although it's yet to be implemented, the indie project Fortnite, you might have heard of it, is considering, it hasn't implemented it yet, but it's considering a monthly subscription. There's not a lot of information on it at the moment, but I think essentially what's happened is certain people have been met with a survey upon logging in, and it's essentially it's asking, for feedback on the idea of introducing some sort of monthly subscription, ranging between $5 and $16 a month, which, although there's limited information about exactly what that would include, the impression here is that it would include the latest battle pass, which I think generally lasts. Fortnite seasons vary, but I think most seasons are about 3 months on average. It would include 1,000 V-Bucks, which is their kind of like in-game currency. Now, some of the feedback they've received has kind of essentially said, whilst the idea of paying a subscription monthly would be okay, 1,000 V-Bucks really doesn't get you very much in the game. If you had 1,000 V-Bucks, you would have, although you could get some things, you would have to spend more money to get more things. So I think the initial criticism of that isn't the idea of paying a subscription, but actually, making it more or rather better value for money. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that. Obviously neither one of us are really into Fortnite, so it doesn't really impact us massively. But they are the biggest game around, and what they do can certainly have a trickle down effect on perhaps some of the games that we play. So
Yeah, no,
thoughts?
definitely. Well, as you kind of alluded to, I don't play Fortnite, but my daughter plays Fortnite quite pretty much as her go-to game at the moment. And
Yeah.
from experience, from seeing what she experiences and what she plays in the game, every time a new battle pass comes out, uses buys a battle pass and redeems the features that way. So from what I've seen, the price of this new subscription is going to be very similar to the price of the battle pass, and I think a lot of the people who buy who play Fortnite as their go-to game typically get the battle passes every month, so it could work out in some instances as like a saving of some sort if you are regularly bought into the ecosystem. I think the fact that it's already a free-to-play game, I don't think it's egregious. I think it's, the are purely cosmetic items. People are free to choose whether they want it or not, and ultimately you could grind and get some of the items yourself. I think the difference between this and ESO is the fact that ESO, you pay for the game, and then you constantly have this stuff thrown in your face all the time, like almost like cheapens the experience by making you think it is a free-to-play game, even though you've just paid for the content for the game itself.
Well,
Whereas
with ESO,
free,
of course, we're talking about Elder Scrolls Online, and
yeah,
I'd say with Elder Scrolls Online, one of the I played it. I played a fair bit of Elder Scrolls Online. I got a couple of characters all the way through to the end game, um, and I would say that I've played it without Elder Scrolls, well, ESO Plus for sure. I've played it with and without ESO Plus, and when I've played it without Plus, I've not felt like my progression has been hindered too much. And I should state that it's been a few years since I've played it, well, at least a couple of years. So, I guess some of the information I'm conveying here might be somewhat out of date, but some of the benefits of having ESO Plus at the time was that you got more gold, or rather you got gold every month, which you could then spend on premium items within the store. You got faster progression in terms of things like XP. So there were some sort of benefits. It was, but for all intents and purposes, it was just less grindy playing it.
yeah,
And I think that the comparisons I would draw between this and Fortnite is that if you can still play Fortnite without this subscription, then great. If it's purely that it's just getting you through the battle pass quicker, it's getting you access to the battle pass without additional cost, if it's just giving you money to spend within the store, then it's not a bad idea. But I think in order to retain that kind of free to play sort of tag, there does have to be an option to play Fortnite without a monthly subscription. I'm interested to see how they decide that, if they do introduce this as a mandatory thing, or if it's optional, but if you opt in, you get more more goodies, as it were.
yeah. I suppose it's kind of I suppose it depends on how they take the payment as well, because a lot of companies like Netflix or Amazon, they almost like rely on you on you forgetting you have a subscription, that you pay by continuous payment authority. It charges your card, and then you almost like forget you have the subscription. I
Yeah,
mean, they must make you rake so much money by people just thinking, it's more hassle than it's worth to cancel it. I'll just keep it running. By having people set up that way, it may work out that people are quite happy to pay for that as well. So I don't know. It's not clearly not something I'm going to be interested in getting in, but for a free to play game, if it doesn't impact the experience of other people, it is just cosmetic only, I think it makes sense. I think it's quite a clever business decision from Fortnite and Epic Games to implement something like this, particularly if it is going to make the content cheaper. And I suppose one thing I hadn't considered obviously there's been a lot of controversy around the fact that the amount of fees that companies take from the money, basically. So, for example, obviously with Apple, it got removed off the store because they offered an alternative way to pay for it. That didn't mean Apple took a cut out of this. I'm
Yeah.
not really sure how subscription models work. I assume there may be some cut, but maybe it's not as dear. It might be a way to circumvent that. I'm not sure. So,
Yeah.
not really in the know about that. So, but yeah, I suppose one thing that kind of caught my eye over the past week, which I was quite excited about to share, is the rumored Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which we've heard rumors about this for months and months now.
Yeah.
And we finally now have the game due out at some point early next year. So it is going to only include all the single-player content. On the website, it says that it is going to include single-based content, all the DLC for Mass Effect 2, Mass Effect 3, plus all the promo weapons, the armors. All packs are going to be remastered and optimized for 4K Ultra HD.
Yep.
So pretty much it's going to be all the core content from the stories, but in 4K Ultra HD and upscaled as well and remastered and look better.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the big kicker for this is that they clearly specify 4K Ultra HD, which means that Nintendo Switch is off the cards for this, which surprised quite a few people because I thought with something like this, that would have been a perfect title to make way to the Switch in terms of like big RPGs that you can play, invest, play on the train, play on the way through. But EA typically don't. If you look at the catalogue of games that have come out in the past, not many of them make their way onto the Switch, which is bizarre because the Switch is selling so well. So I'm not sure what maybe EA has seen something that we're not when it comes to the popularity of their games on the console, but it is only coming out for Xbox One, PS4, it's coming to PC with forward compatibility and targeted enhancements for the Series X and the PS5, and that comes out spring 2021.
Yeah.
Dan, will you be getting this?
Well, like like other games that we've talked about coming out over the next year, really it's going to come down to timing. Again, what else is out at the time? I'm certainly interested. It's been a while since I've played through the Mass Effect stories. They're all pretty fresh in my mind, but yeah, I'm interested. I think it's definitely something that it's worthy of being remastered and brought back for a new audience. People that are maybe have been too young to have played them the first time around. I mean, Mass Effect's got to be what? It's got to be over 10 years old. Is it sort of like 2000?
I want it 2007, was it?
2008, something like that. Something like 2007. It's got to be. We're going to be talking. Pretty far back when the first game came out.
Let's have a look. Yeah, 2007. Yeah, it came out.
So I mean, it's plausible to think that that there are people in their early 20s that were maybe too young to have played, as scary as that is to say, to have played Mass Effect when it first came about. So
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think obviously, being a remaster, it's the hesitation I always have with remasters is, one, how much are they going to charge for it, and two, is it going to do a disservice to the originals? Are they going to release it? And then it's just going to, have they changed too much, or is it going to be, is it just enhancing what is already a fantastic story? I mean, not to digress, but most recently, 13 has been re-released after a 17-year hiatus, and that's come out, and it looks absolutely dreadful. It's not cell shaded anymore. They've kind of made it more like Fortnite. The game is just looks like an absolute disaster in terms of playability and bugs, and the list goes on. But I think if Mass Effect can come out and it can hit the ground running, and it's an authentic revisiting of that story, then it's certainly a there's few games as worthy of a next generation remaster as Mass Effect, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how this performs in terms of a remaster, because we're now in this new territory where the PS5 and the Xbox One have got backwards compatibility to be able to play older games, and particularly on Xbox One, you can play Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 from the 360 on the Xbox One console. But funnily enough, these games by EA don't have Xbox One X enhancements on them. So the only way you can play Mass Effect in 1080p or 1440p or 4K is on PC at the moment. So it'd be interesting to see what you're going to be getting in a remaster when they could have just easily, and I'm sure people will hold them to account, or EA to account, if they just release the games but 4K enhancements rather than actually doing some work. Like the Mafia remake can actually put some effort in to make it look better. I mean, there's going to have to be some, particularly with the first game, there's going to have to be some changes to the core gameplay and how it runs, because those, whilst the lift sequences that go on too long while the game is loading were almost like became a meme at the time. Those type of things aren't acceptable by modern day standards. So
Yeah. I mean, there's. I think when it comes to remasters, there's examples of very, very good remasters and examples of very, very bad ones. It's just where on the spectrum does this lay? And we won't know until it comes out, I suppose.
Yeah, and EA doesn't have a good track record with their remasters. We saw the Burnout Paradise remaster, and it came out, and it was just very bare bones. The Hot Pursuit remaster, which we were talking about last week, and that's come out soon or this week. It's that's the same. It's a very bare bones port from the PS3 and Xbox 360 to the Xbox One. So we'll see it, but it will be really disappointing. I think obviously those two games that I mentioned, whilst they have their fans, I don't think in EA's catalogue they have games that are really as treasured as the Mass Effect trilogy. So I don't, and particularly the way that Andromeda landed, which was an absolutely average game with loads of bugs.
Yeah.
They can't afford to mess this up in the same way. I think this re-release of these games has to really be a loving remaster done right. I suppose the only downside with this trilogy is the fact it doesn't come with the multiplayer from 3, because whilst it was at that time where games were releasing with online passes to try and had multiplayer add-ons to try and convince so they could include online passes onto them to try and reduce pre-owned sales, it was actually quite a good multiplayer game mode, like a horde mode. Did you play the Mass Effect 3 co-op horde mode?
I did, yeah. I played a little bit and sort of, kind of got into the sort of the character creation thing, but Mass Effect 3 came out when I was away, when I was traveling around Thailand for a year. So my experience with Mass Effect 3 outside of the story is quite limited. But yeah, I mean, I remember the multiplayer being okay. I think it felt like it was kind of it was an additional mode which added to the value of the game rather than subtracted. But I would never buy Mass Effect for multiplayer or co-op.
No.
It's always a single player RPG first, and then whatever after that.
Yeah, I just remember just having hours and hours of fun on it. I think it was just one of those things where I wasn't expecting anything from it, and it actually delivered a really fun, engaging multiplayer experience. So it's a bit of a shame that's not making a return, but clearly that's not the focus of Mass Effect when people get a Mass Effect game. It's about revisiting that universe and that world. So fingers crossed we haven't got too much longer to wait for that one. Spring 2021 until we see, and I'm sure we'll get some gameplay trailers before then.
Indeed. And we both talked about a sort of adding a segment to the podcast, which we sort of feel would sort of naturally fit in toward the end of the show, and that's of course talking about what games have come out this week, not necessarily diving into them. I mean, chances are neither one of us have played some of these games, or as we move forward, games that have come out. We're not going to play every single game that comes out. So I guess this is a sort of a section where it's just a chance for us to acknowledge the games that have come out, the games that have caught our attention, what platforms are available on, and I guess a little bit of a discussion whether or not we've got any interest in them moving forwards. So
sounds good.
I'm sort of looking at this from the days that we record. So being from the 4th of November to the 11th of November, we could and maybe we could get some feedback on this from people moving forward. But I guess we could sort of look forward slightly, and over the next couple of days, being that we release this on a Friday. Obviously, there's some games coming out over the next couple of days, which we, in theory, could talk about now. So I guess we can, sort of deliberate on that and get some feedback on that. But in terms of the last week. We had the Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remaster has been re-released, continuing this theme of remasters we've been talking about. That's available on Xbox One, PS4, and PC. Obviously, with backwards compatibility, that'll have some playability on the next gen systems. Is that one you're interested in at all, or?
I really wanted to pick it up and have a look at it, but one of the things that disappointed me is when I saw that it was on the playable on the Series X. It has absolutely no enhancements, which I think that's going to be the thing now. I'm going to be looking for games that are Series X enhanced, but it also runs a 30 FPS lock, and the upgrades are minimal in terms of they've just literally ported it up to make it run at modern day resolutions. That's it. So I'm not sure. I'm on the fence with it, really. I think maybe if it comes on sale, I'm sure it's going to come to EA Play at some point. But sadly, it's not one that I'm now as excited for as I was when it was first announced.
Yeah, I mean, I've got fond memories of playing it when it first came out. I think that was about sort of 2010, roughly, and I had a lot of fun, with the single player, and a lot of aggravation with the sort of friends times, because you would every time you finish an event or a race, it would list like the I don't know, top 5 friends, and it would tell you where your time places with them. So it'd become like a 3-hour grind to like beat someone's time on a certain race. But aside from that, I mean, it was a good feature, but it was also a bad feature. The multiplayer was a lot of fun. The sort of the cops versus racers theme, and so much fun was had playing with sort of various friends on there. I can't remember. I must have played it with you, but I can't really remember who I played it with. But yeah, I mean, that was good.
Yeah, I didn't play too much. I think it was that time I was still kind of sulking at the fact that, or hopeful that we'd get a new Burnout game, and anything that looked very similar to Burnout but wasn't Burnout, I just kind of tried to avoid out of protest. And look where it got me. Look at where we got me. It's been how many years now, and we still haven't got a classic Burnout in the same veins of Burnout 2 or 3. So.
Well, moving swiftly on the 10th of November, we had quite a few games. So I'll run through these, and then maybe we can sort of talk about these. So Fuser came out. That was on last-gen consoles, Switch and PC. 13, which we briefly talked about earlier on, that's come out on last-gen consoles, Switch and PC. And then Valhalla, which obviously you said you've been playing through. That's available on Series X and S, PS5 when that comes out, Xbox One, PS4 and PC, and Stadia. And Yakuza Like a Dragon, that's available on the Xbox Series X and S, PS5, Xbox One, PS4, PC. Before we carry on, any of those grabbed you? Are you interested in any of them so far?
Well, I think the one that I was intrigued in was Fuser. I'm a massive fan of harmonics,
Me
so
too.
when Guitar Hero and Rock Band were competing, Rock Band was always the one that I'd gravitate to, and I even had a little bit of fun, with the other stuff that they've done. But the track list just does not do it for me when it comes to Fuser. I might have to see it instead, or try it out. But yeah, I'm not.
Maybe a Game Pass one eventually, we'll see.
Possibly, yeah. How about you? What about on these ones? Are you intrigued by?
Yeah, I think Fuser, like when I saw that, just I mean, it sort of feels it obviously without the peripherals feels very reminiscent of DJ Hero, but obviously it's Harmonix's take on the DJ genre. I'm interested. I think the deterrent for me at the moment is the price point, the replayability. It is a last gen game, which is presumably compatible with next gen platforms. So I think it's a little bit late in the generation cycle to perhaps pique my interest enough to buy it. But I'd certainly like to try it at some point. I think that would be a I think that'd be like a fun kind of like party game, with a few friends around, a few drinks. So yeah, maybe in the future, but not right now.
Yeah.
13, I was really excited about when I heard about the remaster, and I'm a little bit sad that that's come out
A
to
mess.
it's just come out a mess. There's not really a better way to put it. I only really watched kind of like a brief sort of montage of bugs and glitches, but I think even if it didn't have bugs and glitches, the fact that they've changed the whole aesthetic of the game, they've gone away from that cell shaded sort of comic book or graphic novel art style to a well, I can the best I can think to describe it is it looks like Fortnite, in terms of the characters and the art style now. And Fortnite isn't a bad looking game by any means, but I would argue that if you ask anybody that played 13, back when the original came out, if you asked anybody what the one thing about that game they remember, it's the art style. It's how it.
Yeah.
You can't change that. It's like I don't know. It's like remastering, Super Mario 64 and making all the characters look like real people. Like,
Yeah,
uh,
it's weird. I'm looking at screenshots of it now, on GOG Galaxy, because I'm looking at GOG because of course you can actually buy the original 13 on GOG at the moment. So it's the only place on PC I think of that where you can actually get the original or buy the
get it-
remaster.
yeah, you can get
All
13
right.
on Steam. Yeah,
And like there's some screenshots where the character that you play as has almost got like an the almost like the comic book outline. But then like there's some screenshots where the art style looks completely different, and the MP and the enemies that you go against in every single screen I've seen look like just 3D characters. They're not stylized like you would expect from 13, which is a massive shame. Because I remember when that game came out on the original Xbox and booting up, and it was like how good it looked. And obviously they got away with a lot more because of the art style and how it looked. And without the art style, I don't think there's much else to the game really. I think it's a fun game, but I think the fact that it has that kind of visual effect. You kill someone and they have a speech bubble going, in the back.
yeah,
It's that kind of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
It just looks, it's really cool to look at. And, they butchered the art style, which means it's less cool to look at now. So what a
yeah,
shame. What an
yeah.
absolute
And
shame.
I think the sad thing is it doesn't even seem like it's something that can be salvaged through through updates or sort of patches moving forward. It's kind of the decision they've gone in or that they've decided to go in this direction, and unfortunately for them, it's been met with um, well mostly negative feedback. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And I believe that the game studio who has done this port, I was reading before before we started recording, that the company responsible for it have also done remasters of other games and equally butchered those as well. Um, they don't seem to have a real good track record. Obviously, Ubisoft published the original, but this one has nothing to do with Ubisoft now.
Yeah.
So
Well, on Steam it says it's published by Microids and it's developed by Play Magic. So it's
not good, not
yeah.
good. What a shame.
Um, Valhalla we talked about briefly. You are playing that. That is something I certainly am interested in. I may still get it as a PS5 launch title, but we'll see. What about Yakuza Like a Dragon? You said you were playing, and obviously this isn't necessarily the same as the other Yakuza games, but you said you were playing Yakuza recently. Is this anything you're interested in, or?
It isn't. I think I was watching some of the gameplay on it and what it looked like, and I think for a next gen game, first of all, it looks visually underwhelming in compared to other titles that have come out at the same time. It doesn't look like it doesn't look like what you'd expect on the Series X. It's something that you'd expect to play on the Xbox One or
Yeah,
PS4. But the other thing as well is, of course, the big thing they've changed with this game is it's turn-based.
it's like
So
a
the combat's,
JRPG now, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. And I think one of the appeals that Yakuza has is the fact that the fighting is bonkers. Like it literally feels like playing a a brawling game, almost kind of like almost like a 3D version of Streets of Rage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which is renowned for. I don't mind it when companies take, creative decisions and change things up, but ultimately you can't help but compare it to the games that came before it. And for me, it just doesn't scratch that itch. So we'll have to see with that one. But this is Yakuza 6, so there's quite a few Yakuza games for me to get through before even anywhere near here. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
And I suppose the one game that you did mention that has picked up a bit of steam really is the Falconeer. Have you seen much about this?
Well, I've not mentioned them yet, but that is on the list. So
sorry, I've jumped ahead.
Yeah, you've jumped ahead a little bit.
I'm reading the Google Docs. I thought you'd mentioned it.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! There are two other games that we've not mentioned. So there's Planet Coaster, the console edition, and then of course the Falconeer, which is an Xbox console exclusive.
The Falconeer, Dan. That sounds really good. What do you think of it?
Well, yeah. What do you think of it? Have you played it?
So no, I haven't played it, but I've been watching the footage. It's one of the few games that launched in the Series X that runs at 120 frames, which I think they're quite keen to point out. Digital Foundry had a good video on it earlier. It looks like a fun game. I think it's one of those indie darlings that comes out very early on in the release and will inevitably sell well because it's out on the launch of a console.
Yeah.
I do think it's priced a little high. I think it's £25.
Or it's on Game Pass, I assume. So
no, it's not on Game Pass. No, it is just purchase. No, it is just pay for it. So it's $24.99. I think it's published by Wired Productions, the guys who publish the a publisher indie games. But yeah, it looks interesting.
Oh right.
Yeah, but I can't. It doesn't look very exciting.
You've not played it.
No, just looked at it. So
fair enough. And any love for Planet Coaster? Not your thing?
No, I used to enjoy Roller Coaster Tycoon, albeit I'd get very bored quickly and then just make roller coasters of death and send the theme park staff and the visitors on the roller coaster and send them off to the sky. But
are you suggesting there's an alternative way to play those games?
Well, apparently you can make money and get rich, but all I wanted is just to design roller coasters and just, like I said, send people out of my theme park as quickly as possible. So, no, I'm not a real big fan of those type of sims anymore. What about you? Have you played? Cause it's been out on PC for quite a while. And I know you're an avid PC gamer.
Yeah, I've got it on PC. I've played a dozen hours or so on it. I got it one of the Steam sales. I like it. I always go into those games with sort of great ambitions, and I think, I'm gonna make like an absolutely amazing, beautiful, intricate theme park, and then I get as far as building like a toilet and a path, and I get bogged down and bored. And I think if you're willing to put the time in, those games have immense sort of pleasure and the sort of the that they really, I think you get a considerable return on time invested. That the more you play it and the more the more you come to grips with the mechanics of the game, the economy of the game, and I'd apply the same logic to really any of those sim builders. I mean, another one I've kind of dived into a little bit on the Xbox One and the PC is City Skyline, and it's such a relaxing game to play. And you look at some of the worlds that people have made, both in City Skylines and Planet Coasters on YouTube. The sort of the real hardcore, sort of fans, and nothing but envy for the time and dedication they show to it. But sadly, I've never had that kind of time or dedication to them. So. It's not one I plan on picking up again. Like you kind of acknowledged, I've already got it on the PC, but yeah, I think it's cool that it's made its way to console. And I think the thing that always interests me is that when a game makes its way from PC to console, how they've tackled the decision, or rather the obstacle of converting mouse and keyboard into a controller. And I think the more games that make that transition, the better it is for the industry. Especially as we move forward and cross-platform play is more is becoming more popular. I think being able to make any game available to anybody, whether it be through controller or mouse or keyboard, it's a good thing for everyone. So
Yeah.
it's at the very least it's a win in that column, if not in others.
Yeah, there's definitely an audience for them, and that audience are very passionate, but it's definitely not my bag. I'm just too stupid for those type of games, so I'll lose patience. So.
Fair enough. And I think that's it. I mean, I think the important thing to mention with this sort of segment is that we're not acknowledging literally every game that's come out. It's more, I guess, sort of the main ones or the big guns, or perhaps things that that we've picked up that we want to kind of raise awareness of. But there are lots of games, especially this time of year, coming out. So if you are listening to this and you think we've not mentioned something worth mentioning, then do let us know, and we'll revisit it and maybe talk about it on another episode.
Sounds good. Well, I think we're kind of wrapping up to the end of the podcast now, and before we go, I think it would be it's important for us to acknowledge that today's date we're recording is the 11th of November 2020, which means today is 9 years since Skyrim originally came out, which is quite a momentous occasion in gaming history, I think. Obviously not the latest it's come out, because I think it's been on everything bar toasters at this point, but it's it was when it was first revealed, and it came out on this day on the Xbox 360 and the PS3. So what a game. It just keeps chugging along, that beast. And I think you go on Twitter and it's currently trending, where people are reminiscent about that game. It's whether you love Skyrim or not, I think you can't deny how much of an important game it has been in the 360 era and ongoing. So, although I don't think you've had much experience. Well, I think for you it's just enraged you at trying to run it at anything over 60 frames a second and just delving into the madness. Yeah,
it has issues running over 60 frames a second, but with the with GeForce or the NVIDIA control panel, you can make individual profiles for games. So I've put a frame cap on Skyrim, so whenever I play it, it physically will not run more than 60 frames a second. So it actually works fine now. I'd say over like the last month, I've put about 30 hours into Skyrim, and
nice.
I've got towards the end of the Thieves Guild storyline, or I feel like I'm coming toward the end of that. I've not progressed the main story much since kind of discovering the Thieves Guild, but yeah, I'm sort of enjoying it. I find Skyrim's one of those games that I like playing it on a Sunday afternoon, just as it's getting dark outside, when obviously it's cold and wintry, and it's just a really pure form of escapism. Now,
yeah,
am I going to play it much in a week or so when the PS5 comes out? No, I'm not. But it is a game that I can revisit it, and I think it's one of those games that, despite not being the biggest fan of the franchise or never having finished it, it's one of those games where I could come back to it in 5 years and my experience wouldn't be dampened by the progression of games or the advancement of graphics. It's just one of those games which I think at this point is just timeless, and you can play it whenever you want to play it.
Yeah, bugs and all, it just has such a unique charm to it.
Just embrace them.
Yeah, exactly. Like an arrow to the knee.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think it's good time to wrap up. Have you got anything that you want to add to the show?
No, I think that's a good finale. Good note.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning in and listening to us. Like I said, if you want to reach out to the show, you can do. Reach out to us on Twitter at grapplehookpod, or email us at grapplehookpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, whether you've got questions that you want us to read out on the show, or whether you've got any feedback about any of the segments that we've done or going forward. So, and on that note, we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
See ya.